if you don't have a sponsor in the room who is reframing the conversation, bringing new information to light, giving a different interpretation to things that had happened, that's when people are shown the door. So you definitely need sponsors to be there to protect you. What do you notice about other people and how they're positively contributing to the group or to you? Any of us can go out and amplify other people's good news. There's no bad ramifications for saying nice things about objective, verifiable accomplishments that other people have either done or have expertise in.
That's Dr. Rosalind Chow. She's an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon University who specializes in research on how to elevate others through sponsorship. She shares some of these insights in her latest book, The Doors You Can Open, a new way to network, build trust, and user influence to create a more inclusive workplace. So you'll learn 1, why mentorship isn't enough to advance, 2, how sponsoring others elevates your status, and 3, 4 things sponsors should do and 1 to avoid. And if you want a quick summary write-up of some of these actionable takeaways, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter found at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mikaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Rosalind.
Rosalind, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to talk about sponsorship in your book, The Doors You Can Open. And so maybe just first things first, a matter of terms or definitions, so we're on the same page. Sponsorship versus mentorship, what's the distinction?
So my easy way of telling the difference is to ask yourself who is being acted on or who's being asked to change. So with mentors, they change mentees. So when we give coaching or feedback or advice, we're essentially telling the mentee, here's how you should be thinking about a situation. Here's how you should be acting. Whereas a sponsor is not asking the protege to be any different than who they already are. They're actually asking an audience, some external other person, to see or think about or behave differently toward the protege.
Okay, well, thank you. That is clear and direct. So that's what we're talking about here, and not so much getting advice, seeking advice givers, but serving as a sponsor or seeking out and enjoying the benefits of having a sponsor in your world. So could you maybe kick us off with an inspiring story of a professional who came to get a good understanding of these sponsorship concepts and saw cool career results unfolding from that?
Well, so I start the book with the example of King Ang and Derek Jeter. So if you're not a baseball fan, he's a very famous Yankee player. And Kim Ang actually was an assistant manager on the Yankees during the Yankee dynasty of the early 2000s. She's been working in baseball for a long time, but she only in 2020 got to be a general manager of the Miami Marlins. And that was a big deal because she is the first and to this day only female general manager of a major baseball league team, had probably been ready and qualified to be one for at least a decade before that. But really, she needed a sponsor. She did not need a mentor. She did not need anyone to tell her how to be a better candidate. She just needs someone to really convince other people that she was the right candidate. And so that came in the form of Derek Jeter, who was at that time a co-owner and CEO of the Marlins. And so that would be an example where Derek Jeter clearly helped Kim Ang and her career. I would argue that it also helped elevate Derek Jeter as well. So when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he was lauded not just for his ability and performance on the field, but also because of all the work that he did in helping to elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion in baseball as a whole. And Kim Ang was certainly touted as one of the ways in which that drive of his was manifested.
Okay, that's cool and nifty. And so there's so many threads to go down here, but I want to address this one head on, just in case there is a segment of listener who they bristle or they resent the DEI trainings they've done. Could you make the case for why this stuff is worthwhile and valuable and impactful for them and others in their careers?
Oh, I mean, so great point. Sponsorship is something that benefits everyone. So it benefits the people who are being sponsored. It benefits the people who do the sponsoring, and also benefits organizations. And so I like to help readers to think about organizations as organisms where each part of the organism has certain things that it needs. And what sponsors do is essentially make sure that the right nutrients or resources go to the right places where those nutrients or resources are needed. So it's not DEI necessarily related at all. It's something that we all actually do already in our everyday lives. Whenever we recommend someone for an opportunity, or even when we praise someone, when we're introducing them to other people, these are all forms of sponsorship that we engage in all the time. The thing that I think people don't recognize is that when we do that, sort of when we engage in that kind of behavior, we're making other people look good, but we also look good by saying nice things, introducing people to each other. Because at the end of the day, what we're helping is the group. And in the book, I have this conversation about how, for people who care about having status, being seen as someone who helps the group is one of the best ways to increase your status. And so that's why everyone should be a sponsor, because it actually helps raise your own status. That's what's good for you, but it also helps the group because it makes it so that the group has a better grasp of what sorts of resources are available, who ought to be working on what sorts of problems. So everything runs much more efficiently.
Well, and I like that metaphor as I'm imagining the right nutrients going to the right places. It sounds then there's sort of like an underlying presupposition here that sponsorship isn't just talking up your buddy or trying to be nice and friendly, but that your advocacy is actually helpful in terms of, no, this person really is awesome. And it seems
Right.
like we might not be aware of that. And I'm having a memory flashback here. I remember we were reviewing resumes at Bain & Company, doing some recruiting at the University of Illinois, my alma mater. And so we all had we all went through like 500 resumes. And so we were going to share, okay, who do we think is great? And so we were going through them. And then so someone said this name and I said, oh yes, she is my number one. And then I remember my colleague said, really? Why? and like this person was not even on his radar. And I was like, well, look, she was ahead of this. She started that. She figured out this and check out this down here. And so it was like, oh, and then he was like, okay, I see. He's like, oh, I'm not done yet. And like I had like 6 things and so he's like, oh, okay. I get the point. And so it was telling for me in that in a world of 500 resumes or a lot of noise or chaos or distraction or whatever, it is very easy to overlook and be completely unaware of the amazingness of people in your midst.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, Pete, I feel like what you're highlighting there are 2 things, right? That we live in a world where we're just inundated with so much information. And so how do you get people to rise above so that others actually pay attention to them? And this is where sponsorship becomes really important. One is maybe there's not enough information, and so sponsors are providing additional information. But the other version is there's so much information that sponsors essentially are saying, okay, there's too much information, but I'm going to highlight why this person is the right match for this opportunity or for this problem. And so the other part that you're highlighting that I think is implicit in what you're saying is that there also needs to be some accuracy in making that match. And that presumes then for you to make a good, accurate match is that You understand what the nature of the problem is or the nature of the need. And you also understand the other person's strengths and how they fit that need. You need to be able to articulate that clearly to be an effective sponsor. And if you get it wrong, and this is also where sponsorship is different from mentorship, if you get it wrong, it's not just bad for the person you're getting it wrong about, it's also bad for you because in the future, people are not going to be as likely to weigh your advice or your recommendations as heavily.
Yes. And I think that's helpful because it can be tempting to just, if you're a friendly, helpful person, to just want to support, like, oh, put in a good word for anybody well, hey, I like them and I want to see them succeed and flourish and prosper. So, and here I am with some influence in a room. So that's a thing that I might just want to do to be a friendly fella. But to your point there, yes, that accuracy is key and it should indeed be the right nutrient to the right place.
All right. You want to cultivate a reputation for yourself as being group oriented, right? As being a helper, someone who is willing to make connections when those connections make sense. But you also want to be a discerning helper, right? This is not the like shotgun approach of like, hopefully we're going to send everything out in all directions and hope something hits.
Mm-hmm.
It's you want kind of more of that like sniper sort of accuracy there in terms of diagnosing, okay, this is your need. I have something in my arsenal that I can bring to bear on this problem that you have.
And to that end, I'm curious if folks are asking us to serve in a sponsor role and we don't think it's the right move. Do you have any pro tips on how to let folks down gently?
Yeah, that's that one's really hard. And so this is why I do recommend for people not to ask people to sponsor them.
Okay.
This is not to say that you don't let people know that you are looking for sponsorship, but you have to do it in a way that gives the sponsor autonomy and freedom to decide for themselves if they want to do it or not, because otherwise it becomes very awkward.
Well, yeah. Well, so can you give us any scripts or pro tips or stories to illustrate how that's done in practice?
Yeah. So my favorite way of approaching that sort of situation is to go to someone who you believe has influence in a particular domain and you ask them for advice. So it's always ask for advice, not help. Makes it seem like you don't know what you're doing. Here, it's not that you need help. It's I've thought about it. I have this plan or this desire. Here are my action steps in terms of how I plan on going about getting to this goal. Given your experience and wisdom, I would love to have some other person's perspective on what I'm planning on doing, just in case I might be going about this the wrong way, or there's something else I haven't considered. In that way, you're essentially conveying like I have put a lot of thought into this. This is something I care about. I'm not just kind of flailing around and don't know what I'm doing. But it gives the other person an opportunity to weigh in on what your plan is. And usually at that point is when they spontaneously start brainstorming with you about what you should be doing. And if they're being very thoughtful and think well of you, they will also then say, oh, well, that's a step I can help you with. Right. And then, or like, oh, I know exactly the person you would want to talk to if this is the thing that you want to be doing. Let me go ahead and make that connection for you. Right. So you're pushing them in the direction of seeing how they can be helpful, but also offering them the opportunity to offer you that help instead of asking for it directly. Now, you could at the end be like, that was so helpful. You laid out all these points. You mentioned this person who would be really helpful for me to get to know. How, would you feel comfortable with making an introduction? Right. Now that's pushing, but a thoughtful sponsor would be like, let me think about that. Let me see if that makes sense. And I would also say for potential sponsors who find themselves in a situation where they don't want to make the connection. There's a couple ways you can handle that. One is you can just say, like, I don't really have the kind of relationship with that person that I would feel comfortable doing that. And that's just being kind of honest. The other version is you can say, let me think on that and let me see what I can do. And then you can, behind the scenes, you could reach out to someone and say, hey, this person came to me. I don't really know if they fit with what you're looking for at the moment, but in case they do, I thought I'd just like give you a heads up that they came across my radar. Would you like me to make that introduction? And if not, no big deal. So you're still giving them the choice of whether or not you take their time in making this connection. Because the worst case scenario is that you say, like, okay, I don't really want to make this connection, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to be a nice person. Then you introduce them to each other. And then now you have put the other person, right? That external person, that audience, on the spot. If they care about their relationship with you, they can't just ignore the email. So then they feel like they have to respond. And then if it turns out that it's a total waste of their time, you again, as the sponsor, have also suffered, right? Because now in the future, when they see an email from you, they're going to be like, Pete, no.
Well, yeah. I appreciate you speaking the truths of what's the dynamics underneath the surface, and I totally agree and resonate. And I don't know where I heard this, but someone just called it the practice of a double opt-in for introductions, as in general. It's sort of like that's kind of what I do almost always. And I was just meeting with my podcast mastermind group, and I'm just thinking about how we always do that with guests. And say, hey, this person was amazing. Let me know if you want to talk to them. Because the prospective guest, they already want to talk to all the podcasters. They got the book. They're ready to go. It feels nice on the receiving end. Like I never am upset with someone asking if they may introduce, because like, oh, that was thoughtful of you, and it's like, and I'm not put on the spot, as opposed to, and with the exception being, I'd say, if there's like folks who clearly always want these introductions. Like,
Right.
I sell a thing and there's a person who wants to buy the thing. There's no need for asking permission. I always want those. I always want the hot leads. Always.
Right.
And I think that's probably fair, and generally speaking, in terms of folks of like, this is clearly what you want always. So we could just sort of skip right to it and accelerate.
Yeah. I mean, if I am going to make an introduction without first getting permission from the person who is kind of the recipient of the introduction, is that I am very clear when I make the introduction why I am making it and what one person wants, what the other person might be looking for. So I might say, like, I remember in our conversation the other day, you were having a challenge with X, Y, and Z. And then I just happened to be talking with this person. Turns out they have expertise in exactly X, Y, and Z. So I figured you should probably talk to each other because it seems like there would be mutual benefit here. So I don't do what I really dislike is the thing where everyone's on the email and it's like, oh, Pete, let me introduce you to so-and-so. So-and-so, here's Pete. Take it away, right? And there's like no other context around why this introduction is being made. That one really irks me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understood. I suppose, unless, of course, you have already talked to each other about each other, and now this is just the formality.
Right.
It's like, hey, you both know what each other is about. So here you are.
Right.
Okay. Well, you've got a nice little categorization of 4 categories of sponsorship. Can you run us through what those are?
Sure. So it's what in academic terms we would call a 2x2, where you want to first think about, like, do the people know each other already? If yes, are you trying to maximize a positive impression, or are you trying to minimize a negative impression? So for your listeners, I think it's easiest to just stay on the positive side. The negative side is a whole other animal that we can talk about. But so assuming that what you want to do is create positive impressions, you're either creating right? Because you're creating a new impression, a new positive impression. If you're thinking about this in marketing terms, right, this is when you're introducing a new product and you need to raise audience awareness. And then there's the confirming form of sponsorship, which is when people are already aware of the other person. And now you're just essentially like boosting their already positive impression. So this is again, going back to marketing, right? You have your product, it's already been out for a while, but you're just like reminding people that this product exists in the world and just refreshing kind of their positive sentiments around that product.
I love that so much. Well, it happens all the time. It's like I'm thinking about, I've had two guests on the show, Maui and Steve, and they know each other, but it took a third party to say, wait, Maui, do you know what Steve does? He's doing this team clock business. You're doing this leadership development business all the time. Have you talked about that thing that you're both into? He's like, well, no. I guess we never have. And then away they go. And a beautiful, fruitful partnership was born. And so it's funny and yet happens all the time that we are just unaware of the tremendous assets that's right in our midst.
Right. Yes. And this goes straight, going back to that earlier point about making sure that the right nutrients and resources go to the right places, right? Here's an example where there were resources and opportunities that existed, but people were not aware of that potential match until you have a sponsor who is making that connection for them.
Mm-hmm.
Often because that sponsor is having different conversations with each party than you typically have with each other, right? And so that sponsor holds different information about each person than they hold about each other.
Totally. It's like we usually talk about our kids or fill in the blank as opposed to, this completely different domain. Well, but let's also talk about the negative prevention part of the 2x2, just to round it out. The prevent and protect. Can you lay these on us?
Yeah. So prevention is, and this one's hard, I think, to see in real life because it's essentially the creation of a non-event. So I talk about this in the book is if you're familiar with the movie, The Minority Report.
Oh, yeah.
This is Tom Cruise running around as he does in all his movies. But he is part of this special organization where in the future they have precogs, these people who can predict things that are going to happen. Whenever they see a crime about to happen, Tom Cruise's unit swoops in and essentially arrests the person right before they're about to commit the crime. So the crime never actually happens. It's been prevented from happening. So this is when you're a sponsor and you have a protege and you're kind of okay, I need to manage potentially this information about them that might not work to their favor, or there's this opportunity and I think it's a bad opportunity for them. And if they take the opportunity, it's not a good match. It's going to make them look bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make it so that that doesn't even happen. And we talk about this usually in terms of dead-end projects. The projects that nobody wants to take, they're not glamorous. They don't get you any sort of promotional type of credits in terms of, being chosen to advance or get raises. Somebody's got to do them, but it should not be, if you're a good sponsor, it should not be your protege. So your task as a sponsor is to just say is try and head that off and get somebody else to take that on and essentially protect your protege's time, their reputation. Another example is if there's a problematic person, like a problematic manager who tends not to treat their people very well, you may not want your protege to be associated with them. So then you essentially step in and you say, no, sorry, Pete's too busy doing work on this project over here. Tony's going to have to find somebody else. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen. So that would be prevention. It's preventing something bad from happening. And protection.
Well, if I may, on prevention. So prevent a crime from unfolding to your protege's career. And so I guess within the framework of sponsorship, we are asking other people to change. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
don't pick this person, pick someone
Right.
else. Although I suppose we could just dip over into the mentorship category and tell our protege very simply, hey, this seems like a really risky project. I would suggest you not try to get on it.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. One version, and this is always a yes and, it's not an either or. It would be, in addition to trying to make sure that people don't assign your protege to this bad assignment, it is also telling your protege, if anybody asks you if you want to join this assignment, say no. But sometimes proteges or mentees or people who are lower in the hierarchy don't feel like they have the ability to say no.
Oh, I gotcha.
Right. And so that's when a sponsor really does need to step in and be like, okay, I know they can't say no, so I'm going to say no for them so that I take the heat for that. If they say no, they're going to be seen as like not a team player, right? As someone who's not willing to kind of do the hard work for the team or for the group. And you don't want your protege to have that kind of reputation. So as their sponsor and you're saying no on their behalf, you're essentially taking that risk off them.
Well, Rosalind, I appreciate the way you're talking about the gritty realities, because a naive, idealistic view would be, well, then that organization ought to abandon that project and find ones that are truly more value creating for the enterprise. Or, it sounds like there's some toxic cultural forces that really need to be cleaned up if these things are in existence. And so, like, yes, I guess there's another yes and. Like, yes, that should happen. But unfortunately, it can often be the case that these things exist and we have to deal with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think my answer to that also is like there will always be the less desirable things to do in an organization that are still necessary for the organization to function. And so, one thing that a leader could be doing is thinking more systematically about how those projects or tasks are allocated so that it's not just based on people volunteering or being voluntold to do them, or make it very explicit that, like, yes, this is not a fun thing to do, but it's something that we are going to reward by making it more promotion worthy so that everybody understands just how valuable it actually is.
And protect.
So protect is one that we don't see often, but actually is consistent with, I think, how many people think of sponsorship when they think of sponsorship or if they think of sponsorship, which is that whole proverbial, like, someone's pounding the table for you, right? In these backdoor meetings. Well, the only reason someone's pounding the table is because they're disagreeing with other people. Otherwise, there would be no table pounding. And so this is what is when people are talking about you, maybe they don't have really great things to say about you. And your sponsor is there and they're saying, I don't agree with your assessment of this person at all. This conclusion is flawed. Maybe it's based on inaccurate information, maybe incomplete information. Let me give you some context around what happened so you can better understand why they made the choices that they did. All of this is, as you know, we talked about earlier, it's to mitigate these negative impressions. I don't know that you'll ever get to a situation where people then have positive impressions of the person who's being talked about in this way. But if you don't have a sponsor in the room who is reframing the conversation, bringing new information to light, giving a different interpretation to things that had happened, that's when people are shown the door. So you definitely need sponsors to be there to protect you. But hopefully if you are doing sponsorship well, you won't ever be in that position because your protege will always be seen as positively as possible and no one will ever have anything negative to say about them.
Okay, thank you. Well, Rosalind, can you give us any other top do's and don'ts for getting sponsors, doing sponsorship well?
So, one of the main points of the book is that we typically think of sponsorship as something that only people with power can do. And it's true that people who have lots of power are typically able to sponsor in kind of these much more visible, obvious kinds of ways. But that does not mean that people can't be sponsors. So I like to encourage everyone to think about how they can be sponsors, usually in the form of, as we talked about earlier, what do you notice about other people and how they're positively contributing to the group or to you? Not only should you be letting them know that they're having that impact, but you also want to make sure that other people are aware of that impact. Because as you already pointed out beautifully, oftentimes people are completely unaware of what other people are working on or doing or even passionate about or things like that. And so any of us can go out and kind of amplify other people's good news. There's no bad ramifications for saying nice things about objective, verifiable accomplishments that other people have either done or have expertise in. So that is the safest way to be a sponsor, is just to say, I know Pete's
This is a fact.
yeah, Pete's a great podcaster. I love being on his podcast.
Facts.
Right. Fact. Exactly.
I'll take it.
And there's no cost to doing that, right? Because you're not asking for the audience to go take a leap of faith in any real sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we start projecting into the future, when you start kind of making some sort of a guarantee about how a person's experience is going to be when they engage with this person. That's when you start putting a little bit more skin in the game as a sponsor.
He will not let you down. You sure?
Oh, yeah. Right. I know, right? So be careful, like how hard you're pushing, right? Because the stronger your guarantee is, the larger the penalty if you get it wrong. But so everyone, though, again, if you notice people doing good things and you can speak to it confidently, there is never any downside to making that more well-known to others.
Yeah. And this just makes me think of like any time we recommend any product or service or business to anyone ever, I could just say, Yuri at Leal Flooring, it was quick and responsive and installed my flooring beautifully within the price range that ChatGPT told me it should cost. These are facts. And so if you're looking for a flooring person, you're like, oh, well, that sounds better than what I'm dealing with right now. I would like to talk to this person. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, being careful about whether or not you're talking about your own personal experience, things that happened already in the past versus things that are in the future and uncertain.
Okay, well said.
Big thanks to Rosalind for sharing her wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out.
One sponsored checkout is Strawberry.me Career Coaching. Having real clarity and direction can make or break your career. If it seems like you're putting in the work but not seeing your career take off, some coaching might be just the ticket. Strawberry.me matches you with certified career coaches who help you gain clarity on what you really want next in your career, develop a results-driven strategy, and stay accountable. And they can also help you flourish beyond career issues. I had a fantastic session with my coach, Brett, about handling stress from so many responsibilities in so many areas. He was fun. He was wise. He just really got me. We had some laughs and a good time and a good rapport. And he gave me an exercise that has been so quick and so effective for me. I've been doing it every day. So if you're ready to take control and build momentum in your career, go to strawberry.me/awesome to claim your $50 credit. That's strawberry.me/awesome. Because awesome careers don't just happen, you make them happen.
Well, now could you share with us a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
So you probably know of this idea of team players, right? And the question is like, how do you know someone's a team player? How do you identify who they are? How do you even know how they contribute to the group? right? I mean, we all have this kind of vague sense of like, oh, Pete's a team player. But then if you were asked, what do you mean by that? Like, what does Pete do that indicates that he's a team player? Well, one version is like, well, it's because you do things on behalf of the team. But there's another version that these researchers found, which is that there are some people who just by their presence in the team actually amplify the performance of other team members. And they don't even have to be talking to each other. And that's the part that kind of like blows my mind, is that they have these tasks that people do together in groups. And some of the tasks don't require anyone to talk to anyone, but just they're able to statistically pull out the fact that when you have a team player in the team, they actually help other people perform better, just their physical presence. And I just find that so amazing. And I think what's going to be hard for organizations is like figuring out who these people are. And my guess is that at least some of what these team players are doing is they're sponsoring their teammates, right? They're saying like, oh, okay, we're working on this right now. Actually, Pete's the right person to be doing that task because Pete's like got the right skills for this. And naming kind of all the resources that are in the group and just making sure that they're going to the right place.
Okay. And a favorite book?
Probably somewhere between Cryptonomicon, so that would be Neil Stephenson, and he has another one called Anathem. So I'm just a big Neil Stephenson fan.
Okay. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
You can go to my website. That's rosalindchow.com. Also, I post fairly regularly on LinkedIn. And just to be clear, I don't post about myself or my own research, actually. I like to post about other people's research because I think there's so much great research that happens in academia that doesn't get translated and sent out into the world for other people to know about. And so that's one of the things that I love doing on LinkedIn. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will get lots of posts in your feed about new research that's really exciting.
Cool. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
If someone's doing something that is really great and has a positive impact, go ahead and name that for them, not just to them, but to everyone else.
Beautiful. Rosalind, thank you.
Thank you.
I love what Rosalind had to say about there being no downside whatsoever for saying nice things about others that are objective, verifiable accomplishments. It just puts out good vibes as well as informs people genuinely, oh, we've got a resource available. We've got someone who's really good at that thing. Good to know. Win, 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 win all the way around. It's almost like someone letting you know, hey, by the way, did you know that there is another account in your bank with $800 in it? Yeah, that's pretty cool. No, I did not know that. Oh, there's a precious resource on our team, someone who's really talented and can do a thing well. Oh, that's an asset, a resource, a wealth. Good to know about that. Great stuff from Rosalind. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1060. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Are you looking for a new job or want a career change? Look no further than Monster.com. Need a little help standing out? Our expert resume writing services will make sure you shine. Want to brush up on your interview skills? Engage with our AI interview prep tool. Want some advice on negotiating your new salary? Visit our salary tools and extensive library of career advice articles, and you'll have all the tips and tricks you'll need to succeed. Visit Monster.com today and take the first step towards your career. Monster.com. Find your right job fit.